It's the Ugly American Werewolf in London rock podcast with your hosts, the Wolf and Action Jackson, who are keeping rock alive by talking classic rock, hard rock, progressive rock, heavy metal, 80s music, early MTV, UK vs. US chart success, and much more. This is the home of classic album and live concert reviews and your place for interviews with artists and legends. You're rocking with the Wolf. Hey out there, rock and rollers. Welcome to episode number 215 of the Ugly American Werewolf in London rock podcast. Brought to you by me, your host, Mac B. the Wolf, and I will be joined, as I always am, by my partner in crime from the East Coast of the USA, Mr. Gary Action Jackson. And we appreciate you tuning in for what's been a very snowy start of the year here on The Wolf, and for tuning in last week to our take on Fly By Night, the second album by Rush, but the first to feature Mr. Neil Peart on the drums and on lyrics, a real big step forward for them. And it was a fun one to do. Fun way to start off the year. R.I.P. Neil, we've been without you for 5 years now. It seems impossible that that's true, but we thought that'd be a good way to honor him, and I hope you check it out. But this week, we are diving into a Van Halen record, and one, interestingly enough, that we do not know very well, and that's Balance, the last album that they would make with Sammy Hagar, which comes out in early 1995, and had the songs Amsterdam, Can't Stop Loving You, Seventh Seal. You might be familiar with these, but again, you might not. Although this is like a triple platinum seller in the US, it is not the most popular Van Halen album ever. And after For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, which hit big in the summer of 1991, before the start of grunge, this is kind of after the ebb of grunge, and if grunge isn't over, it's certainly on the downslide at this point. And with a sober Eddie Van Halen and a new short haircut, you thought either A, now Van Halen's gone grunge and I don't know how I feel about that, or you felt B, hey, Eddie's cleaned up his act. That's good. I bet it leads to a lot more creativity. Well, this album is not our favorite, and it's a little uneven in some spots, and there's some very odd things in here as well. Some very strange instrumentals that aren't Eruption or Cathedral or one of the classic Van Halen instrumentals. And while they had songs that charted and did well, I don't know if there's a whole lot in here that really grabs my attention to say, oh wow, yeah, I'm sorry I missed this back in the day. I should have paid more attention because of these few songs. There's some highlights, but this is never going to be up there with 1984 or the debut album or even 5150. But before we get into that, we do have a little business to take care of. As always, we like to mention that we are proud members of the Pantheon Podcast Network, a family of over 100 different shows. You can learn more at pantheonpodcast.com or follow on socials at Pantheon Pods. And we have to give a shout out to our fantastic and killer sponsor, rarevinyl.com. I know a lot of you are record collectors out there, and you don't just want the new stuff as it comes out. You want the classic stuff. You want original printings. You want original vinyl, and you want it in good shape. Well, go to rarevinyl.com, and you can use the code UGLY to save 10% off one entire order. Not just one album, but one entire order. So you want a box set, you want a bunch of different deleted singles or imported singles that are hard to find. Maybe you want a first printing that's in mint or near mint condition. You can find it in the over 250,000 items in stock in Rare Vinyl's catalog. So go to rarevinyl.com, use the code UGLY to save 10% off your entire order, and your record collection is going to thank you. Now back to Balance. We love Van Halen. We love their history. We love their majesty. We love the importance of Eddie Van Halen as a musician. But by 1995, hard rock, as we knew it from the 80s, had really run its course. It was not super popular with the kids. Van Halen had gotten older. They're parents now. They're buying clothes from the Gap. Eddie is sober. It's not quite the same. You can still hear touches of Van Halen, but it's not what we came to expect from them over the first 15 to 20 years of their career. And that's why we had to analyze Balance, because it's not one that jumps out. It's not like, oh man, I love Balance, or these few songs off Balance didn't hit the radio. Not that many people do. And that's why we're doing it now. We're going track by track on Van Halen's Balance as it turns 30 here on The Wolf. So
much fun. I made it to about 10:30 on New Year's Eve and said, I am done. Good night.
Good for you. That's awesome.
I was talking to everybody at the party, and I'm done with that. I'm sorry. I care nothing about staying up till midnight. Ooh, whatever. It's just, let's just keep going.
New Year's is such a non-holiday.
Correct.
And speaking of non-holidays, they should make the release date of Balance a non-holiday all around the world, because it was not a great Van Halen album, and it was the end of the Sammy era. Released January 24th, 1995, the 10th album by Van Halen, and some would say the last, because Van Halen 3 with Gary Cherone, nobody wanted it, nobody bought it, everyone tried to ignore it like it didn't happen. And then, although a lot of people wanted to hear a new David Lee Roth album for a long time, A Different Kind of Truth was just kind of, you missed your window, guys. It's past... They're past their prime, and,
that one fell way flat.
It's, they regurgitated some stuff that had been like Bullethead, that'd been sitting around since the 70s anyway. It just kind of further showed that Eddie, although he kind of got sober and cleaned up for this album, I think his alcohol use just kind of drove him to be incredibly unproductive throughout the last quarter century of his life.
So you mentioned that at this point in time,
anyway.
Yeah, at this point in time, he was sober.
That's right.
But I think that took its toll on him as far as the rest of his life, because you spend time being drunk. And when you're drunk, you're creative. You do all these things. I don't know what finally drove him to get sober, whether it was his wife, whether what happened. But I think having to now live your life without this crutch is incredibly difficult, and I don't think he was a super great person to be around at this point in time.
That's the story, yeah. That's what we've been hearing. We've heard that for a long time, that he was kind of doing his thing and smoking, lighting one cigarette with the cigarette he was just finishing, and going through many packs a day and drinking too much and probably smoking a lot of weed. I don't know for sure. And, and it led into cutting off all his hair and putting on a goatee. And so they're like, oh, that's the grunge thing. You're going grunge too, aren't you? He's like, no, it's just, this is kind of a new beginning for me, and I'm changing things up. But you have to admit that when we first saw that, and we kind of got to jump back, but I'd say when we first saw that, we thought, oh God, Van Halen's even changing for the grunge too. But we kind of have to go back in time here to our own thing and what was going on with us when Balance came out. Because for years, the new Van Halen album coming out was big news. It was something we were excited about. It was like, oh my God, Van Halen are back. I wonder what kind of solos Eddie's going to have on this thing. I wonder what kind of cool riffs they're going to have. What kind of fun videos are they going to do? And even though we were like seniors in college, this, I won't say it went under our radar necessarily. It was just something that I was not excited about at this point.
Well, what was the first single that you remember off of this?
Can't Stop Loving You.
I think it was for me also. And I remember thinking just like, oh, this is it? Okay, well, I guess we're going in a different direction here, and maybe not one that I want to go with you on.
I hear you. Yeah, and that wasn't the first single. Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do was the first single.
Right.
But the one I remember was Can't Stop Loving You, which was a pretty big deal for them. I mean, it went to number 2 on mainstream rock. It went to number 1 in the UK. It got a lot of airplay. So, 7 on pop airplay. There's definitely a video for it. But you're right. It's soft. And we'll get into the songs here in a little bit.
But I guess that's my point, is that when this came out, when I first became aware of it, the sounds that I was hearing off of it did not wow me.
No, and we just gone through grunge. In fact, 1995 was kind of the death knell for grunge in some ways. It was huge from 91 to 94, and then people were kind of sick of the downer grunge stuff. I mean, they just were, and a lot of those bands were already starting to fall apart and have issues because of drug problems or deaths or whatever. And in America, people were looking for something happier. Like Hootie and the Blowfish, who managed to sell like 23 million copies of that cracked rear view around this time, because like we don't want this grunge anymore. It's too negative. It's not happy. What happened to it? You would think something like Van Halen being a positive thing coming back would spark, interest in it or whatever. And look, the album did pretty well. Bounce. It sold 3 million copies, sure. But I don't know. Me personally, I had gone into kind of a heavier stage. I was into more 70s rock and 70s stones at that point, and then to hear these guys singing Can't Stop Loving You, I'm like, is this really what I'm looking for anymore? No, it's not. It's the first time in a long time that I didn't buy, and I still don't own Balance, but first time I didn't buy the new Van Halen album when it came out since 1984.
And the one before it, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge.
Yes.
It wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't horrible. So you were kind of rolling into this thinking, okay, yeah, here's let's kind of reset with the new Van Halen record, and then okay. And I think they were going through some hard times too in the band world also. Their manager had died. They had a new
Leffler
manager.
had died,
so,
yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, and no, I remember when Unlawful Carnal Knowledge came out, I was we were just getting ready to go to college together. I was still a huge Van Halen fan. Huge. I had not loved OU812. Particularly didn't like Finish What You Started. I'm like, that's not a Van Halen song. That's like half country song. I don't like that. And so when they come back with Pound Cake, I was like all excited about it. But then it was like, yeah, but that's just a gimmick. He's using his drill on the... Right. He's not really innovating or making this killer new sound. He's just kind of using something silly, kind of a gimmick kind of thing. And then 316 was the new like instrumental guitar track, but that's something that had been around for a long time. He'd been playing that live for like 7 or 8 years or something like that. And he just decided to dedicate it to Wolfgang because it was something that, he could get him to like relax or to sleep to when he would play that for him or whatever. So it's like, okay, go ahead. It's time to go ahead and lay this down. This is kind of a trend with Van Halen that they keep stuff around for a long time and then eventually it makes it on an album. But that doesn't mean that it's awesome. It just means that they finally found a way to use this thing that they haven't really been able to use for so long.
Right. There's they were talking to Wolf Van Halen about the 5150 studios and, there's this vault full of stuff in there. What's in there? Are you going to take it apart? Are you going to release it? And he kind of always, brushes it off like, well, I've got my own stuff to do. And, I don't really know what's in there. Apparently there was a computer that crapped the bed about this time. So that any catalog is done. But I think really it's probably just fragments of stuff. There aren't really songs. It's just ideas that he had. Because, apparently a lot of this stuff is things that Ed had for a while that he was kind of reworking. So I don't think there's any lost golden Van Halen songs in there, just ideas or parts of ideas.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't get any of the collections because there's the collection part 2, which is the 4 studio albums with Sammy, plus an extra disc of 8 rarities. And some of them were like B-sides or some of them were like soundtrack stuff. I haven't listened to all those, but I've listened to Balance. And I know that it's a little long. And I mean, it just, everything seems wrong about it. Apparently, Sammy was fighting with the Van Halen brothers a lot at this time. I did not like the cover at all.
That's a huge downer for me. When you see this thing, it's odd. It's not something that I'd want to really even look at.
No.
So it kind of puts you in a bad mood for the whole record.
Yeah, it's like naked children, on a seesaw. Oh, wouldn't it be a horrible apocalyptic thing if you've got a conjoined twin and they can't play on a seesaw? I'm like, okay, the cover is a horrible, awful thing. Yeah. And they tried to kind of make it in the shape of the Van Halen, logo. I'm like, just put the Van Halen logo on there like you did for Carnal Knowledge,
That would work perfectly.
That worked fine on some red leather. That seemed to work, Atlas holding up the world with the Van Halen logo on 5150. That worked, So this is bad. I mean, I saw it and I didn't want it in my record collection. I didn't want people to come in and look at that. Naked conjoined twins. That's weird. Yes, it is weird. Why is that there? I don't know.
And what are you trying to set up for the rest of for this record? What are you trying to tell me that now we're the party band, everything is going to be all right, is now the world is ending, everything is terrible?
Well, and I don't know if that's the effect that grunge had on, the industry or what they were thinking or what, because Sammy's a pretty positive guy and he writes these songs that things are going to work out. And, even Can't Stop Loving You was about him taking his ex-wife's perspective, thinking, well, she still loves me and she can't help but love me because I'm Sammy, and I got all this blonde curly hair and and, you know, I sing these happy songs kind of thing. But Eddie was going through a hard time because he had quit drinking, and I don't know. I think
he had some other health problems too at this point in time, right? Like his hip was messed up or something. Right. Yeah, and then Alex had the neck brace on for the tour, which looks horrendous, by the way. If you ever see those shots of it, he just looks like he's in pain. And why are you making this man do this?
I know. Instead of the balance tour, they call it the ambulance tour. I mean, of course, the tour did very well. And I think there was a pay-per-view from like Detroit where you could, and I think I actually bought it and recorded it. I don't know if I still have that or not. Because I think I recorded it out of like just obligation, because I loved Live Without a Net. And of course, before they released this album, they released really the only official live album was Right Here, Right Now Live, which we loved, which we picked up, you know, as soon as it came out, like, hey, Van Halen's finally got a live album, and here it is. And I think that was probably to buy a little time too, because they were starting to have some issues within the band. It's like, all right, well, let's go ahead and put out a live album, and that'll buy us some time to kind of work some of this stuff out. And I don't know, it's like Johnny Cigarettes in England. A reviewer said, you know, look, monks are chanting, sleeve notes are in medieval script. Van Halen has decided to get serious on us, you know. They used to be the world's biggest party band, and now they're doing some like concept stuff and kind of taking some of the fun out of what it was to be Van Halen. And I think they were right about that.
And for as big as a band as they were, I wonder how much autonomy they had, or was it this the record company or the management saying, hey, you know, there's a sound out there now that's popular and you need to fit into that. There's a story that Sammy told. Oh no, it wasn't Sammy. Somebody else in the band was telling about that greatest hits record that they put out in like 96. The one where they showed up on the MTV Awards and with that super awkward deal. But I guess the deal was the record company said, if you don't do this, if you don't make this appearance, we're not going to push this record. And you'd think, I mean, it's Van Halen. Like, what? Shut up, put it out. But I guess they still were at the mercy in some way to the industry, to the record company. And maybe this was part of it. Like, you know, with the sound that you had in the 80s, we need something new. We need something different. Fit in with what's on there. And to me, that really hits home with the stupid videos they made, which are super generic. And they look like, if you didn't have the band in it, if I just showed you the other clips, you wouldn't know what it was. It could have been a 10, 15 other bands at this time. Yeah,
no, you're totally right about that. Yeah, it's just disappointing. And Carnal Knowledge came out before Nevermind did.
Right.
So that's pre-grunge as far as I'm concerned. And so early 1991 to mid-1991 was just the 80s continued, right?
Right.
Seriously, like there's still, all record companies love quote unquote hair metal bands, and if you've got long hair and a couple guitars, you're going to get signed. And it was probably time for some of that to start wrapping up. I always kind of thought Van Halen was above and beyond that.
Right. Yeah. Right, yeah, they were kind of their own. They had enough of a track record where they were their own thing.
And because Carnal Knowledge came out before Nevermind, and now this comes out in early 95, kind of after grunge has gone way up and then way back down, you would think, okay, yeah, Van Halen's ready to go ahead and lead us back to the promised land. But it just didn't work out that way.
Hi, this is Mick Wall, and you are listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London.
So I guess we should start, and you know, the fact of the matter is it's not only Sammy's last album with the band, but it's the last time Mike really played on a whole album, because he only played on like 3 or 4 tracks or something like that on Van Halen 3, and Eddie did all the rest of the bass on there for the Gary Cherone record. And then after that, they kicked Mike out in favor of Wolfgang. So this is them, you know, kind of just falling apart, it seems like.
And I think that whole story kind of taints me also to this part of the band's history, because you knew there were real bad times coming. They were really at the end of the rope. They always kind of managed to put it back together, even with even with Dave leaving the band. You know, well, you know, they went their separate ways. They picked up Sammy. They went on. But yeah, I think now they're really at the end of their rope. And to me, it kind of comes through on this record. Like, it's very disjointed. It's not a team effort. And well, we'll get into it with the different tracks here.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and start to jump in here because, yeah, I don't want to spend a ton of time on some of these because they just kind of make me angry, to be honest with you. All right, so they kick off the album with The Seventh Seal, which was going to be the name of the album until somebody suggested balance, like trying to find balance after Loeffler leaves, trying to find balance whether you're on the Sammy side or the Van Halen brothers side, I guess. I don't know. But it starts off with like some mystical didgeridoos, soft riff, and which is kind of tinny or synth. It just synthed. It does not really sound like Eddie, even though Eddie said he wrote it pre-Van Halen. I don't know about that.
Yeah, and what part of that was him? Monks chanting.
And then Ed's guitar is kind of U2-like, and that's just not what we're looking for in a Van Halen record. We're looking for cool riffs and show off kind of Eddie Van Halen stuff.
Especially to start the record.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. I mean,
because even though, like, you go back to the previous studio record, Pound Cake, was it a great song? No, but like the intro was kind of, at least you started off with a kick, and once this song gets going, it's very Pound Cake like with the bass and the drums. I'm like, yeah, you recycled this from the last record.
And there's no real solo on this first song. How can you have a Van Halen album start off with a song with no solo? I mean, there's something haunting about it, but for a first song of a Van Halen album, that's really weird.
Yeah, there's no chorus really either, which you can come back to. So it's a very strange choice for the first record. He's got that one line, "Under darkened skies we see the light." I'm like, that's a cool lyric. I don't know why you didn't use it again, because that kind of lifts it up a little bit. To me, this song's a mess.
It is. I think the bridge is a little bit better than like the verses in the chorus, but that's a pretty low bar right there. Someone cracked the seventh seal. Nothing sacred, nothing left unturned. When nothing's simple, then nothing's learned. I don't know. Take me down, 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 down. Yeah, going to hell. I guess. At first though, when I heard the noise, I was like, "This is grunge ruining another great band." This is because the Stones had come out with Voodoo Lounge the year before, and we were all excited for it. I'm like, why do the Stones suck now? Because they're trying to keep up with the times, Right. They should have just gone back to being an old R&B band and they would have been fine. But no, they're trying to keep up with the times, and it doesn't sound good, And I'm like, this is the way you start it. Now, what's interesting is, because Sammy just did that kind of Van Halen tribute tour with Satriani and Mike and Jason Bonham for most of it. Kenny Aronoff filled in for him. But they played Seventh Seal about every single night.
Really?
It was for the most part the only one they played. I think in Japan they played Can't Stop Loving You because it was probably a bigger hit over there or something like that. But yeah, they played Seventh Seal every night of that tour because you have to represent that album somehow, I suppose. And he liked it, I guess. I assume that's what it was. Sammy liked it. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but there's so many other songs you could play in its stead from other albums. But I understand you want to represent it somehow. That's fine.
I guess, but then I think if you didn't play one track off this record, nobody would care.
No one would care. Yeah.
The show.
No, everyone would be fine with it. Now, the second song, Can't Stop Loving You, this is the one that I remember the album for.
Right, yeah.
To be honest with you. Second single released March 10th, 1995, and it did pretty well for them. Like I said, second mainstream rock in the U.S., seventh on airplay. Number 1 UK rock and metal, which is a big deal for them, but 33 on the main UK chart and 30 on the Billboard chart. And it was backed with Crossing Over, which is a Japanese bonus track, and then Right Now Live and Man on a Mission Live, which is from Carnal Knowledge. My notes are, is it a bad song? No. Is it what I think of when I think of Van Halen? No. Is it a typical Sammy era? Yep. But in 1995, it's a little tired.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like it could have been on 5150.
Right. Or it could have been on a Sammy record also. And there are a couple tracks like that. It's, you kind of got that cheesy acoustic intro. The harmonics are kind of cool at the beginning, but yeah, it's just to me it sounds like, boys, we need a single for the radio. What do you got? Well, we've got this that's you're just trying too hard.
There's a time and place for everything, for everyone.
Yeah, and again, if you're singing about your ex-wife singing about you,
Yeah.
huh? That's weird. And I had a note here that sounds more like Neil Schon than Eddie Van Halen on
Okay,
this. Like
there you
it's
go.
it's slick. It's not raw at all.
Right. Yeah, it sounds overproduced. And I did have a friend who saw that the Best of Both Worlds tour, and he mentioned if there's one person who loves Sammy Hagar, it's Sammy Hagar.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that, yes, him writing this song about his ex-wife who, wow, she just can't get enough of me. I am that great. Right.
That sounds like Sammy, yeah. Well, Bruce Fairbairn was the producer on this, and we've talked about Bruce on here before. He's produced some really big albums that we are fans of, but he did work with Aerosmith, and he worked with AC/DC, Bon Jovi. He was busy around this time. Worked with Kiss, worked with Yes, worked with Poison, worked with Blue Oyster Cult. He'd been around for a while, but Sammy said Fairbairn gave him the most trouble, I guess, that he ever had. And it wasn't so long after this, it was 1999, where Fairbairn died at the age of 49 in Vancouver. Now, most of the recording was done at 5150, but some of the vocals, Bruce did have Sammy come up to Vancouver to record with him.
Yeah.
But in 1984, they had to film the videos kind of separate. Everybody's separate because the band was falling apart. And here we are in 1995, and it's happening again.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a weird dynamic too, because now the new manager is Alex Van Halen's brother-in-law. Mm-hmm. So, you've kind of got that other relationship too. And yeah, I think everybody was just at each other's throats, and probably they were trying to get rid of Mikey at this point in time too, because apparently they were always trying to do that.
That's crazy to me.
It's insane, especially when now in the I don't know if you've seen anything with that Brothers book. Apparently Alex is like, oh yeah, he was the rock that, no matter what happened, he was there to make sure that everything was cool, everybody was okay with each other. He sung the harmonies, he played the bass.
Right.
Why were you constantly trying to just shit all over this dude? I have no idea.
My only thought is that they always with Van Halen had split the royalties 25% a piece for everybody. Mm-hmm. And they're thinking, well, look, if Alex and Eddie are really writing the music, and then Sammy's really writing, or Dave are really writing the lyrics, and Mike's just there to plod along the bass and sing harmonies, should he be getting the same 25% that the rest of us are for these records?
Okay.
That's my thought. I don't know if that's true or not.
Then if that is the case, and that's the problem, why don't you talk to him like, I don't know, an adult, and just say, hey, this isn't working out for us anymore, instead of just saying he was terrible, he could never play, we had to help him along with everything. Just be an adult.
Yeah.
And perhaps maybe that was Ed's problem.
I don't know. But we move on
to
Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do.
Right.
It was the first single. It was released on January 9th, 1995. So our show, On Balance, comes out 30 years to the day that the first single came out. And it was backed with an album version, which was 2 minutes longer or whatever. And it is a little long on the album. I'll just say that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a reaction to Kurt Cobain killing himself a little bit. But then the video is, I won't say it's nonsensical. It tells a little bit of a story about, a guy doing a stick-up job and all that kind of stuff. But what sucks on this is there's nothing really showcasing Eddie other than a pretty decent power riff. That's it. It's not really much of an Eddie Van Halen song.
Right.
Until after 5 minutes.
if you've stuck it out that long.
But yeah, but it shouldn't be that long anyway. And the single didn't have all that on it anyway, because the single cuts 2 minutes off. So this is them. I feel like they're grasping at straws. However, it was number one on mainstream rock for 3 weeks and number one on UK rock and metal. But I think part of that was just like, oh, new Van Halen,
Right.
yeah, give it to me.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the intro riff isn't bad. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't sound like it's Van Halen. We've gone kind of dark to light to dark again in the tracks. Yeah, I have a note here. Is Van Halen trying to be more relevant? Grunge? Question mark. I don't know. Yeah, the video is people going to jail, and this is your life is ending, and yeah, I don't know. No thanks.
I can't shoot a gun in the streets. Stop me some heroin. I can jump. Be the sacrifice, bear the cross, just like Jesus Christ. And I don't wanna hear what love can do.
Yeah, it's not something from a party band. I mean, it's like Van Halen's gotten too serious on us here, and not in a good way. There's a choice. It's my destiny in my hands. Yeah, it's up to me. I can drive, but then it's I can shoot a gun in the streets, score me some heroin. I can jump, be the sacrifice, bear my cross just like Jesus Christ. What? No.
This is way too heavy for this band.
It really is, and it's just not that good. It's better than I remember it, but I just remember thinking, I don't want anything to do with this. I can't believe Van Halen has done this kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably the same thing. Like, yeah, you heard it the first time. This is the brand new single. Okay, here we go. Oh, what is this? Mm-hmm. Oh, and then maybe gave it a couple times. Like, well, maybe we'll get into this. And yet, no, I don't think so.
No, and this is the big hit off of it, basically. I mean, I would say "Can't Stop Loving You" was the bigger hit because it's kind of got that classic Sammy Van Halen sound to it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of soft, but I mean, it's listenable. I don't find "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do" as listenable as "Can't Stop Loving You." But yeah, that's just me. But it doesn't get better. I mean, after that, there's Amsterdam, the third single, released June 26, 1995, which is back with Finish What You Started and When It's Love Live. Mm-hmm. It did go to number 9 on U.S. album tracks, but to me, it's like the problem I had with Oasis saying, "Where were you while we were getting high?" There's no poetry behind it. You're just like, we were sitting around getting high kind of thing. And now Sammy's like, hey, Amsterdam. You can get stoned in Amsterdam. Let's sing about getting high in Amsterdam.
Didn't you say this was your theme song when you lived there?
No, I did not. I did not say that at all.
This is the dumbest song on the face of the earth. I hate it because it's a manufactured piece of garbage.
It is.
So at the beginning he says, and I have this note, light 'em up. Get it? Get it? We're going to smoke pot in Amsterdam. Shut up. This sounds like a Cabo Wabo cousin. Like you were kind of messing with the riff.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Well, that worked for us. Let's do it again. So your big hook on this is, it's Amsterdam, man. Okay, so what's the hook? Wham, bam, Amsterdam?
Yeah.
Cool. What did you write this in 20 minutes before the tape was going to roll? This is terrible.
Like Moss Tequila is better than this.
Correct. Yes.
And Moss Tequila sucks,
Yes.
Got a pocket full of money. Got me a long night ahead. Quick stop by the bulldog. Store me some Panama Red, yeah. Wham, bam, on Amsterdam. Stone you like nothing else.
So
seriously,
apparently,
quick stop at the Bulldog to score some Panama Red. Right. Got me, come on, dude.
So if I was from Amsterdam, I would be very upset with this because, so you're telling me the only thing we have to offer is legal kind of weed and prostitutes. awesome. That's it. That's the only reason you would ever go there.
You know, and the boys are from Amsterdam, right? That's where they're born, you know? So
Right.
you'd think it would be more of an ode to their hometown. And even Eddie's like, there's no poetry to it. There's nothing, you're not telling a story. It's just wham, bam, Amsterdam,
Exactly.
you know? And it's still not legal anywhere in the U.S. at this point. So I know some people are like, oh, yeah, man, that's cool. Let's go to Amsterdam and get high. Eddie's toying with the guitar and being a little silly here. There's a little fun stuff with the guitar, but it's just a song about getting high, and overall I don't like it, and I didn't like it back then. MTV wouldn't even play the video because of the pot references, because pot references were such a horrible thing in 1995. So I don't know, it's just, you're grasping at straws, it seems like, here.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what this is. We're like, hey, we need a spark. We need something to tie us back to the old stuff. We're still cool. We still like to party. So let's do this thing. I mean, the song is okay. I mean, the music part to it is okay. It's derivative of what they've already done. But the lyrics, like I said, it was like you were going back and forth, and then finally you said, we're going to record this. Sam, you've got words for this? Sure.
Wham bam.
Yeah, give me 10 minutes and we'll have this. It's just, no, I never liked this even when it first came out. I thought it was terrible.
No, it's bad. It's bad. And now we roll into Big Fat Money.
Mm-hmm.
Give me your impression of Big Fat Money.
To me, this sounds like kind of the same deal. You had this music, and then you said, well, let's make a song out of it. And you just threw some lyrics on top of it. Now, I will say, this is a little more rocking. So I'll give you that, but yeah, no, it's just these words thrown in on top of this music.
My note is the rhythm is good, but the song isn't. Seems like you can hear them going through the motions and falling apart, which I guess was what was kind of going on at the time. It's just Big Fat Money. It's what we're all chasing. Let me see here. It must be good for something. Come on, pay the rent. Telephone, telefax, telefunkin, teletrash. Telecop, tell a friend. Think we hit the stony end. Huh?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like just say words that rhyme over the track.
They want big fat money, too much temptation, enough to kill a generation. Space station, starvation, premature ejaculation. This is stupid. Gimme some of that big fat money. This sucks. It's frantic. It's frantic from Sammy. I don't like the tone of Ed's guitar on the solo. I don't like the song at all.
Yeah, there really isn't a whole lot to be excited about. The piano at the end is kind of a cool change. You're throwing in a different sound, but yeah, this also sounds very forced. To me, that's what this whole record sounds like. Like they were fighting with each other. It was time to make a record, so they just kind of threw some stuff together and here you go.
Yeah, and did the record company even push them? Because it's been 3.5 years since they've had a Van Halen record. They got a new, head of Warner's or whatever, ready to be psyched to push the Van Halen out there. It's like, we've always had good luck with Van Halen the first part of the year, so let's go ahead and stick it out there. I don't know. But here's the thing. It can actually get worse. As bad as it's been for the first 5 songs, it can actually get worse because there's 3 instrumentals on the album. Now, you tell me, hey man, the new Van Halen album is going to feature 3 just instrumentals. You're thinking, wow, is there a new Eruption? Is there a new Cathedral? What could possibly be going on? All right, Strung Out. Scratching on Marvin Hamlish's piano because Eddie had rented his house. It's ominous and odd. It's not even 2 minutes long. And so he's playing some of the harmonics, so it sounds like he's trying to saw through the strings, and some of them he broke. God, it's just bizarre.
Correct. I would have been very upset when I found out what he did to my piano. And this is reminiscent of this dude. And I was thinking about this when I was reading about it. John Cage, who is I don't know what he is. He's a musician, but he's also like a performance guy. And he had this thing called a prepared piano, which he would open the thing up and just stick things in it, like bolts and screws. And so it made a crazy sound. That's what this sounds like to me. You're just making weird sounds come out of this deal and also messing with the finished product. I think maybe it had something to do with him, Ed, what he was going through also. Like he was just kind of wandering at this point in time.
Yeah, and he was putting ping pong balls in there, just trying different odd, weird things. It's not quite a minute and a half, but it goes right into Not Enough.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Intruder that leads into Pretty Woman.
Okay.
Is it better than Intruder? Because Intruder's kind of, especially at the very end of it, it's just real noise until it gets to
But you've got that killer drum beat, though.
Right, and it was part of a video. Like,
it
was made to fit the video. Whereas this is just like, for some reason, Fairbairn liked it, I think. Whereas, like, Eddie's like, yeah, I'm doing all these weird things. Isn't it cool? Yeah, it is cool. It's like, no, it's really not that cool.
It's just noise.
It just isn't, you know. And then it goes into Not Enough, which is the last single, which barely charted, 97 on the Billboard charts.
It's because it sucks.
Yeah, and like, should John Waite have sung this song? That's, my note. It's Sammy schlocking up Van Halen, and it's the end, I think. And it's a reason that I didn't buy the album. And it's really too long. And if you put it together with Strung Out, it's way too long. Who wants this? Nobody does.
Nobody. So here's my note. The lyric is, to love somebody equally. Weren't you just singing about banging whores in Amsterdam? Like now we're going, oh, no. I really love you, baby. Like we're going to have this relationship. Shut up. This is awful. Stop it. Plus you're on a rooftop in the video. Like nobody's ever done that before.
It's not enough. It's not enough.
To love somebody secretly and never touch. To love somebody honestly and always trust. To love somebody tenderly. The tender touch is not enough. It's not enough.
I got to tell you, the backup vocals don't sound bad on this album. I'll give you a plug there. Between Eddie and Mike, I think the backup vocals sound pretty good on the album. There's your compliment. You've been waiting for one. There it is.
Hey everybody, this is Britt Lightning from Vixen, and you're listening to The Ugly American Werewolf in London.
Actually, okay, let's move on.
Yes.
Aftershock.
Okay.
This is pretty good.
This is probably the best thing they have to offer on this record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little generic, but I think it could have fit on Carnal Knowledge, and there's a little Eddie magic on here.
This is what you've been waiting for. Yeah, please, give me something.
For the most part, yeah, but it's the 8th song on the record. I had to wait to the 8th song before I heard something that I actually liked. This is horrible, man. This is a bright spot. Aftershock. And I didn't know this song because, like I said, I never bought the album.
Yeah.
I never dove into it. I always thought, look, I'll always have a chance one day to go back and listen to it. Well, this is that day, and I'm sorry that I did it, you know. I didn't know how bad the album was that Aftershock was going to be the only thing that I really liked off of it. They could have just put out a single, Aftershock, and just not even bothered with the 53-minute album. Crazy. But Aftershock, if you're looking for a Van Halen track you're not familiar with that you might like, try Aftershock. I think you'll appreciate it.
You could have put this one on the Best of Both Worlds and I would have been happy.
Yeah, you could have made this the first track too.
Yes, absolutely. That may have changed things up a little bit. I don't know, but
4 singles and this isn't one of them.
Yeah.
That's dumb. Dumb. And then speaking of dumb,
Uh-huh.
next is Due in Time, the second instrumental. And it's really just Alex putting all these drums on it. It's
right. This is
unnecessary.
This is a it's just him messing around. Yeah, this was one of those, like, it's an intro to another song, but the other song is another instrumental.
Right.
Okay.
This is just cut it. I mean, I know we're in a day and age of CDs, but you cut it. Now, in saying that, the next song, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, Balukaterium,
Sure.
Catherium, something like that, that was cut off the LP back in the day because they had to cut it for time. And so they chose to get rid of this one. I probably would have gotten rid of Strung Out and Doing Time and then made room for this one. Not because it's so good necessarily, but it is a song without lyrics.
Yeah, that's exactly what I have. This is a song with no words to it because it has a beginning, middle, and end. It's got it's got a bridge, it's got a riff in it. It's just, this is an unfinished song. And if you have no words for it, you can just say, oh no, this is an instrumental.
Right. And I mean, I get the guitar is basically the voice, and there's but the heavy bass distortion in some of these spots, it's just a little off-putting. And I'm like, are they just filling time on the CD or just giving us everything because they know this is the band coming to an end? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why you would have included this also. It's just, you've already got enough tracks. I don't know why you need a third instrumental. And like you said, the concept of that, not hearing this record sounds great. We're going to hear him, Ed do some crazy things. And now on the third one, you've figured out that's not the case.
No, I mean, it's a kind of a decent song and some decent guitar stuff in there, but there's no lyrics. It's just it's just song without lyrics. That's all, or song without vocals. That's all it is. And if you bought the LP in 1995, I know that LPs have made this huge comeback, but who was buying LPs in 1995?
No one. I don't even know where you could have gotten it unless you had some kind of specialty record store. You weren't buying this at the mall. No, that was in 95. It wasn't even a thought of mine. Oh, I'm just going to buy the album cut of this. No,
it was getting hard to find needles for record players anymore. Like, they just don't make them anymore. Because why wouldn't you have a CD? It's more durable. You can take it in the car. It lasts longer. But hey, for the real audiophiles, you gotta have it at the LPs, right? Okay, so that's that's the 10th song on the album. Take Me Back, in parentheses, Deja Vu. Wind chimes at the beginning are a bad sign.
You should probably call this what this really is. This is a Sammy song. We're on a beach, far away, take me back. Oh Lord. Yeah, this is one that I guess this had to be something that he wrote most of it, because this does not sound like a Van Halen song at all.
I know. My note is acoustic to start. Sounds like something Sammy would do at first.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, even on the guitar, it's like, this sounds like Sammy playing the guitar. And then they plugged in part is kind of tinny and weak to me. And the chorus has a big chunka muted, bit on it. To me, it's like the song doesn't really know what it wants to be. And it's a little slow, and it's a little long.
And we've also been here for a while, yeah.
It's almost 5 minutes long. It's like, and it's like we're on the 11th song, and only one of them is good, and then there's a couple that are kind of okay. Yeah, I mean, you're really losing me at this point. And then Feelin', Feeling is very long. Feeling. It starts with just Ed. It's kind of chill.
Yeah.
I do like the guitar stuff and the jam with Alex. It starts after about 3 minutes. The problem is I'm already over the album.
Yeah.
You know, I would probably move this up. You know, I'd move Aftershock probably up to number 1 or 2 or something like that. I would move this up at least to the halfway point or something like that.
You're right. You're out of gas at this point in time. We've been here for a while. This thing drags along, and you've got your socially conscious lyrics in here too about politicians smoking crack and all that kind of stuff. It does pick up, but then at the end, what is this, Kashmir now? Oh my goodness. With
I know.
the strings, and it's just stop already.
And there's a big stop and slow down around the 4:15 mark, and there's big loud riffs. But the way, I mean, I guess it makes sense as a way to end the album, but I mean,
at this point, you just don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Just end it, man.
Yeah.
Don't give me a 6.5 minute song to end it. Just end it.
White is black.
Now, on Crossing Over, which was the Japanese bonus, this is actually better. I mean, I immediately knew it should have been on the album. It's got a little bit of Cathedral. Whatever he does to make Cathedral work, which I've watched it 1,000 times, I still can't really figure out exactly what he's doing there, but he's doing it again on Crossing Over. And look, it's kind of a B-side in that there's not a lot of Sammy on it. It's a little intentionally weird and ethereal. It makes a good B-side, but as bad as this album is, it should have been on the album because it's better than most of the stuff on there.
And what does that tell you? Usually the B-side should be like, oh yeah, maybe it could have been, maybe it could, maybe it shouldn't have been. But it's a nice treat. If you're saying that it should have been on the record and other stuff should have been left off, that's a huge red flag.
That's right, yeah. And so then they have to go out on the road for this. Now again, 3 million sold in the United States. Triple platinum in Canada, platinum in Japan. It didn't do badly, and it went to number 1. Fourth straight Sammy album to go to number 1. Went to 2 in the UK. The highest they'd ever been in the UK was 2 for Balance, at least rock and metal albums. And it got in the top 10 on the main charts there. It's a big deal for them. And it went to 2 in Japan. So, I mean, they're still doing pretty well. Just the name Van Halen's going to sell some records, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, for Van Halen purists who were pissed at 5150, oh my God, they must hate this because it's not good. I mean, and then they go out on tour and Ed's got hip problems. He's trying to be sober. Alex has got neck issues. They're trying to get rid of Mike. Sammy's like, I can just go back to being Sammy. I don't really need this nonsense, and then they tried to get Dave in, but then Dave was such a mess at the MTV Awards, acting like an idiot. Like, okay, well, we can't do it with Dave. So now we're going to go get the lead singer of Extreme. And then they're like, okay, well, we'll just take Cherone. And he doesn't have a bad voice, but he's just not Van Halen. And it's the album nobody wanted. And it's like, first of all, Balance was not good. Might have sold well, but it wasn't good.
And then everything imploded.
You try to do these 3 Dave songs. The Me Wise Magic wasn't horrible, but I didn't love it. And then the whole David Lee Roth thing didn't work out anyway. So now they try something else. I remember the Fire in the Hole song from Lethal Weapon. I guess that would have been Lethal Weapon 4. I think it was. Yeah. The last one, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's Van Halen, isn't it? It's like, yeah.
Well, I remember, I don't know if it was that song or I don't even remember what the other songs off Van Halen 3 were, but I remember hearing it in the car thinking, well, that's somebody trying to sound like Van Halen. And then they were like, well, that's the new Van Halen single. What? With new lead singer Gary Cherone. And I just said, I can't.
I'm done.
I can't with this.
It's over. Fun note, Steve Lukather did some background vocals on Not Enough. Gotta love Luke.
Okay. Excellent.
They could have asked him for some songwriting help, I feel like, on this.
Maybe some riffs, too.
It's just disappointing. And, technically there's 12 Van Halen albums, Van Halen 3 being the 11th, Different Kind of Truth being the 12th. To me, there are 10. And this is the 10th out of them all, kind of by far. I would probably rank... Although there's some bright spots on OU812, I might put Carnal Knowledge ahead of OU812. I think
that's fair. Yeah.
5150 for me would be 7th, and all the Dave albums outrank all the Sammy albums.
I think that's a very fair comparison, or very fair ranking.
Although I can listen to 5150 a lot more than I can like Van Halen 2, but does that mean it's better?
Right. Well, and 5150 kind of gets the nostalgia ranking too, because it came out. That was our first Van Halen record that we could go and collect.
And I watched Live Without a Net over and over, and I taped it on cassette so we could listen to the car over and over and over. So yeah, I mean that's when we were still believing. We still wanted Van Halen to be amazing and this most incredible band in the world. But at this point, the shine is off, and I gotta believe, honestly, it's the fault of the Van Halen brothers. That's what it always comes back to. Dave had to leave because of the Van Halen brothers. Sammy had to leave because of the Van Halen brothers. Mikey got kicked out because of the Van Halen brothers. They couldn't make any new music for the last 20 years because of the Van Halen brothers, basically. I mean, talented as they were, I think they're troubled. And obviously, Eddie had drug and alcohol problems. I don't know. I guess that's the price you pay for some genius. But the thing is, that first, call it 75 to 95, there's a lot of genius. From 96 to 2019, there wasn't much.
Yeah. And then I saw a clip of when they did that reunion tour with Sammy or was it the early 2000s?
Yeah, 2004, something like that.
Eddie was just a complete mess at that point in time. Like, he looked like a crazy person.
He lost his teeth.
Rotten.
Yeah.
He was about 97 pounds, soaking wet, just off the rails. And apparently, he was doing stuff like trying to punch out plane windows at 30,000 feet, and I think his life just fell apart.
I mean, I saw that tour, and the stage was killer. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than when they got back together with Dave, even though the catalog opened up a little bit with Dave, and you could play some of the songs that we had hoped they would have been playing for a long time. It's just not the same. And I'd put a review on Ticketmaster that I thought Kool and the Gang, the opening act, was better than Van Halen that night, which of course they didn't publish because they're trying to sell Van Halen tickets.
Right.
Not Kool and the Gang for 45 minutes tickets, but it's a disappointment. I think that they're the number one selling U.S. rock band of all time. I think that's right, over Aerosmith. I think they're number one. For them to just fall apart and not do anything of any consequence for the last 20 to 25 years of their existence, that's just a waste. It's a waste. And I understand I would have, even though they would have made good new albums, I'd be like, well, it's not as good as 1984. I know that. But it doesn't mean, if you're a real artist, you don't just stop, and basically Eddie stopped.
Yeah, I think even if he'd have done other things, now he's doing orchestral scores or movie scores or something like that. At least if he was moving forward, he kind of just got stuck and didn't progress any. He had ideas, but I mean, in reading this, and then you were talking about Different Kind of Truth, it just sounds like most of this stuff is all just old recycled ideas. Yeah,
and so he lost his creative spark. He lost his creative fire. He had a problem with everybody except for his brother. It's just it's sad, but I mean, Beethoven didn't have many friends either. And in the 70s and 80s, Eddie was special, and he wasn't, I feel like, at the end. So that's our take on Balance. It was not one we were ever really familiar with. It was at a time when we felt like Van Halen was done. We'd moved on to other things in our lives. And I'm not going to say that Van Halen was passé, but it wasn't what we were looking for anymore. And they weren't doing the kind of stuff that made Van Halen Van Halen. They weren't even 80s Van Halen with Sammy anymore. They were kind of a shell. And from what we can tell, the band was falling apart at this point. So it's pretty tough to make an incredible record when you're personally and professionally going through a lot of tough times. It was the death knell for Sammy in the band. And while a lot of fans of David Lee Roth were like, great, get Sammy out of there, it didn't lead to Dave coming back to the band, at least not for very long. A few songs on a greatest hits album and an appearance on MTV, and then that was it. And then that led to Van Halen 3, which nobody wanted, nobody liked. And then eventually led to Sammy coming back to the band in a touring capacity in the 2000s. But that's all a big mess. And it's just kind of sad that this amazing band that is hailed as one of the great hard rock bands and the number one selling American rock band of all time kind of fizzled out a little bit here. And it wasn't just one album and fizzle. This is like decades of fizzling out. It was over. And it's sad to me because we worship Eddie Van Halen as this great innovator that he was, and a special musician. But at the end, the last 20, 25 years, even though he was sober during this part, they were not doing their best. They were not amazing. I know music had changed and a lot of their fans had grown up and moved on. But if they did some great work, we could come back now and dig in and appreciate it. And I just don't think that they did. I don't think this is among their best work. There's not a lot of standouts here, and it's just disappointing to everybody. But we want to know, folks, if we get something right, if we get something wrong, do we miss the point? Do we leave out your favorite part? You gotta let us know. Email us. It's uglyamericanwerewolf@gmail.com. You can let us know the bands, the albums, the concerts, the tours, the DVDs, the books, the rock properties you want to hear us talk about here on the show. We need you to make sure you download and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and then make sure you download every episode. It's important for us to grow the show. And another great way to grow the show is write us a 5-star review, okay? People see those, other rock and rollers like you, they see that, they decide to give us a chance, they like it, and we get new listeners. And if you send it to us, hey, we might just read it on an episode. Thank you to Pantheon Podcast for making us part of the family. And thanks to rarevinyl.com, our amazing sponsor, where if you go use the code UGLY, you can save 10% off one entire order. That's it for this week. Lots of exciting and interesting things to come this year, so you're going to have to stay tuned. And to all you rockers all around the world, be cool and keep doing what you do to keep rock alive.